I think we've just got to hand it to Toronto FC at this point. Not once this season have we done one of these shows and not had something major to talk about in this week. Absolutely no different. My name is Mitchell Tierney. This is Waking the Red Weekly, presented by Footy Talks. And on an international break edition of the show, have we seen the last of Josie Altidore at Toronto FC? More injury problems, and of course, a big summer for both national teams. To help us break all that down, we'll be joined by Joshua Kloke of The Athletic. About 15 minutes or less. Can't wait to get his take on all the things Toronto FC and all these recent happenings. But first, as always, joined by Michael Singh, Jeffrey P. Nesker. I mean, I can probably guess how you guys are doing this week.
Get out of
how's
here.
it going?
I hate you, Mitch. Mitch is just gloating after his Habs knocked out our Toronto Maple Leafs last night. And man, I'm still in a little bit of a state of depression here. Like, that was, I've been a Leaf fan my entire life, and that was pretty bad. That was up there. But I tried to turn to Toronto FC last night, see if I can, help, lift my spirits. Did not help. It did not help.
Yeah, I think we're or at least you guys are banking on the national team at this point, and we'll get to them a little bit later on in the show because there's at least some hope when it comes to those two teams and what they've been up to lately as they go into a big summer. But I think we got to start with the biggest topic right now in Toronto FC going into this international break, and that's the Josie Altidore situation. Begins with a report out of ESPN.com from Jeff Carlisle, who of course reported back in preseason that Altidore was potentially looking to move. He said this time that Altidore was training on his own after a confrontation with head coach Chris Armas. Altidore, of course, was not in the lineup this past weekend against the Columbus Crew. Toronto FC not commenting too much publicly on this, other than to say they're taking this international break to consider the best options for club and player as they go forward and try and sort this situation out. I guess thoughts, guys. I mean, we knew this was going to be an interesting season when it came to Josie Altidore, but it just keeps the plot just keeps adding at this point.
Keeps getting thicker, man.
Yeah.
I said this on our Twitter Spaces for anyone who managed to catch that after Saturday's game. I think Jeff and I and Mike Newell went for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
A long time. My dinner was cold when I.
It was a long time. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot to really dig into here. What I will say, and I said this again on our Twitter Spaces, is that I don't believe that is the full story with Josie Altidore. I think that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of how deep that conversation went between him and Chris Armas. I think there's a lot more details that may come out. Maybe we might not even hear the full story, but I don't think that report by Jeff Carlisle does the entire story kind of justice. So, I mean, we've seen what's happened with Josie Altidore in the past with this club, right?
This ain't his first rodeo. Exactly.
This isn't his first rodeo, and each time, let's think back to when he called out Toronto FC, Bill Manning in particular, for what was it, like banishing Sebastian Javinko's trainer, something like that back in 2018, and then obviously at 2020, which is actually one of my first days live on the beat, and one of my first times actually speaking to Josie Altidore was when he called out the club for the handling or mishandling of Michael Bradley's injury. So Josie Altidore isn't afraid to kind of put himself in the spotlight. And what a shame it would be to see another club legend, go out like this for Toronto FC.
I'm gonna take advantage of your segue because you really want to believe that Josie calling out the Seba trainer was pre-Seba leaving. It wasn't. It was after Seba had left. And like I said on the spaces, Josie, he's an outspoken guy, but sometimes you got to read the room, and you can argue about how and why he was given his extension, but to ignore that some of it wasn't knee-jerk by result of Seba, Victor, Tim, the whole team jumping ship basically, would be a fool's errand. And when you look at the other players, and I'm gonna use Michael Bradley as an example here, working behind the scenes, not making his contract shenanigans about the team, being very careful to keep that in the back, and then taking a pay cut so that we could up on another DP. This has got to really aggravate the team in a really profound way, because not only do they trust him with money, but he was there when Seba made it about him in 2018. And I think this outburst supersedes Seba's outburst, right? Seba just took place in the locker room. We found out about it later while we were raging about the injuries and the CCL and the post MLS Cup hangover. Josie's making it public during a pandemic year while they're playing away from home. I don't like that. I don't like that about this situation. It seems like, if you're going to poke a bear in the zoo, poke a bear in the zoo, but there have got to be consequences for stepping this far outside the lines when recent history has shown, that the club doesn't take too kindly that.
If you're gonna poke a bear in the zoo, poke a bear in the zoo. Your analogies are the best in the game. Let me just point that out first.
Listen, you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you're gonna poke a bear in the zoo, you're gonna get bit. The expectation that you're not gonna get any consequence for being an ass, it doesn't wash, right?
So you say Josie made this public. Was it Josie Altidore that made this public?
Even if he didn't, he didn't stop it from spiraling out of control. And the man is extremely online. So, if he's got the time to call out Taylor Twellman, he's got the time to put a cap on this. The fact that he didn't speaks volumes to whether, who cares if he instigated it or not, right? Like,
yeah, he did do that. To your point, he did do that after the rumors this offseason.
Exactly.
It was when Greg Berhalter came out and said that clubs are calling him to inquire about Josie Altidore, and that was same guy. Jeff Carlisle put out the report where he had a coming together with Ali Curtis about his contract situation, and what did Josie Altidore tweet? The Devils working overtime or something like that a day later.
Yeah.
This time we're not hearing any of it. So it, as Mitch kind of alluded to, kind of off the bat. Could this be the beginning of the end for Josie Altidore here at Toronto FC? And
I think it's been the beginning of the end for a very protracted 3 seasons. I hate that it's ending this way, but I agree with you, Mike. If they can find a way, the details, the devil is in the details. And one of the tweets that said that TFC have been looking to move Josmer since the beginning of the season probably alludes to the fact they've been trying to move Josmer for a lot longer than the beginning of the season, and they haven't. And you've said if they can find a way, and at this point, hurt egos are par for the course. Nobody is getting out of this with clean hands. If they can find a way, it's probably for the best for everybody involved.
Mitch, what are your thoughts? Because you're staying silent down there, buddy.
Well, Mitch loves Don Dwyer, and that means Dwyer jumps up the depth chart. He's
I don't know if I love Dom Dwyer that much that I don't know if that he'd hop up the depth chart. I think, yeah, like I said in my column, and like you said just now, I mean, the biggest thing is just, it's unfortunate that we see another Toronto star go out this way. I mean, in some ways, the situations are all very different. Some were out of the control, sort of out of the club's control. I think this one in particular might be. The Di Rosario one a while back definitely was not out of the club's control, it would seem. So there's levels. You can't paint them all with the same brush. But when you're a top club like this, any team, you want to see the players that have really come through for you, leave the club in a good way. And this seems like another situation where a player is going to leave Toronto FC having done so much for the club in a bad manner. And that is disappointing. Yes, Jeff.
I'm burning here because we all know it's complex, but if we can go by the knee-jerk hot takes that we've been disseminating on the WTR boards, most people and sports fans like to see things in a myopic sort of black and white view. We do not want to establish a precedent here, right? And the danger here is that Josie knew full well that this was a bone of contention with our club. It's not that far removed from history that it's not primarily on all of our minds. So for him to do this, and it could just be negligence. I mean, saying nothing is just as bad as saying something in some cases, and this is one of them. It's a tacit attempt to create a precedent. Nobody is bigger than the club. We tried to prove that with Seba, and if Josie has to be another skull on the mantelpiece, then so be it. Because I don't want this club cowtailing to player demands. And the other thing that I really don't like, and this was Josie's opportunity to speak up, is that it's so easy for people to infer from what we've been delivered that Josie is like, well, Chris is screwing up the team and taking absolutely no accountability for his performances on field, right? It's an easy stretch of the imagination to make, and he's done nothing to dissuade people from making that stretch of the imagination. So his house is not in order, and he, pardon my French, but his poo don't stink. And I think the club, unfortunately, at a certain point, you got to cut your losses, and it doesn't matter who you are. And I think we figured that out with Seba. And if Josie wants to try a spin on the wheel of doom, that's his prerogative. But it's unbelievably frustrating that he is. I mean, we have a gold standard here, and that's Michael Bradley. He's the gold standard, and he's in the same damn locker room, right? Like, be better. I think that's all I need to say there.
It's interesting because we haven't heard from Michael Bradley on this matter, and we know that Michael Bradley and Josie. Yeah, I know that Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore are really good friends. So I'm interested to hear kind of where Michael Bradley's head is at in all of this. And I mean, when he speaks to media, it won't be candid, right?
Exactly.
Won't be
exactly. You know what I mean? People are raising paws for coming out and saying, and I love how you included his little backtrack every time you quote it, right? Because I think that's important. And people are expecting that if Mike is gonna come out, he's gonna tell it like it is. No, it's a political exercise, right? Like, you're still gonna have to read between the lines. There's still gonna be a lot that can be subjective. So, as much as I'd like to hear what Michael Bradley has to say, it won't be like I'm sitting at a bar stool getting the nitty gritty, right? It's
we might not. So I know where you're sort of exiling Josie Altidore there, but we might not hear the full story of all of this until a couple of years down the road, right? As Jeff said, I wholeheartedly agreed. No one is bigger than the club. So if Josie Altidore, let's say hypothetically, he is making it about him and not the club, then okay. But what if he is trying to do this for the better of the club, and then maybe they didn't like the way he went about it, right? There is a possibility in some universe that a couple years later, maybe even a couple months later, when this whole story comes out, people will be like, whoa, what Josie was saying was actually correct.
Seba with Manning in the press box taking in a game, right? Absolutely. It's just, even if it's altruistic from Josie's perspective, there are channels, there are internal channels, right? All it would have taken is a tweet after the Carlisle story.
It's never been Josie Altidore, though. That's never been Josie.
But fine. But given it's been days now. So even if it was like a flush of anger, because he is high tempered and we love him for it, but to come out and say I was wrong, we're dealing with this internally. Maybe not even to say I was wrong, but to say I went about it the wrong way.
But because he literally hasn't said anything about it. He is handling it internally.
That's no, it isn't, because he's letting the court of public opinion write the narrative, because he thinks he can rest on the court of public opinion.
So every time someone writes an article about him, he's going to tweet out the devil's working overtime.
That's a very, very, very fair point. That's a very fair point. I would argue that this isn't any other article. This isn't any old article. That would be
right. But he literally just did it 3 months ago. So what I will say is that I do think there is something to this, to the fact where Toronto FC are seriously going to be evaluating Josie Altidore's future at this club. There's a chance that, as Mitch said at the top, this is the last time that TFC fans would have seen Josie Altidore take the pitch. And to kind of sum it all up, in my opinion, and I've said this in the past, if Toronto FC can find a way to get out of Josie Altidore's contract, albeit in unfortunate circumstances, it would be one of the best things to happen to this club right now, because Josie Altidore has not been worth a designated player contract for 2.5 seasons. When he signed that deal originally, I think personally he was worth a designated player contract. He was scoring like there was no tomorrow. He was one of the best scorers in Major League Soccer. And a part of that also had to do with the fact that Sebastian Javinko was leaving, and they wanted to tie down one of the cornerstones of this franchise before things kind of got carried away there. So I think the deal itself was fine originally, but it's caught up to them because Josie Altidor's health hasn't been up to par. His ability to stay on the pitch, of course, hasn't been up to par, and when he is on the pitch, his performance just haven't been up to par. So if TFC can find a way to get out of Josie Altidor's contract, bring in a player like a Pozuelo or a Soteldo up top, I mean, this team gets that much better and gets that much closer to winning a championship. So in my opinion, if they can find a way out, like just strictly soccer speaking, it is better for the club. But the fashion they're doing it in, it's not ideal.
I agree.
Yeah. No, I
absolutely agree.
I think that's all fair, and we do know Toronto FC have at least entertained moving Josie Altidore since the start of the season. They've at least looked into it based on a number of reports and things we've heard. So I think it's starting to get more towards the point where this is fairly inevitable.
I think the club was also trying to have their cake and eat it too. I think they were looking at situations where they would get a transfer fee, where they'd be, put him in the shop window, have him succeed, and then move him on. Because right now they're looking at a serious loss. But I think that we've crossed that bridge, and at this point they're now entertaining offers from anywhere. I mean, I know he has a no trade clause within MLS. But I think they're leaving no stone unturned now, and they'd be willing to take a loss just to get him off the books. And that's sad. That's really, really, really sad. But I don't think anybody's blameless in this situation. I don't know where the pendulum lies. I was very much on Team Seba until a lot. I mean, Victor was a foregone conclusion. I mean, the guy wanted a paycheck. We got him for a song. He got us the championship. It hurt. It sucks. It's terrible watching him with the Galaxy, but no one stood in the way. Seba was trying to game the system, and he was a lot more insidious than that. So, only when details started to come out about what he was doing inside the locker room did I really start to change my opinion on Seba on his way out. My issue with Josie, I'm not going to walk in circles, is he should be better. You should know better. I mean, you're an adult in a professional capacity. I know that you're a hothead, but sometimes you got to eat the shit sandwich. I'm sorry, I swore there, but sometimes you do. And if you really love the club and you really, listen, everybody's burnt out. We're all so burnt out, but be better, man. Like, it's a pandemic. You're playing in Orlando. Like, be better. It's not about you.
It's interesting that you said that we're going to take a loss hypothetically on Josie Altidore. I mean, perhaps. But I think in the global transfer market, we look at the price they paid for Jefferson Soteldo. You're going to make that up in the transfer market because you can go after clubs who are financially, burdened right now because of the global pandemic. And I think you could find deals around the world that would help you make up that loss. Like whatever it is, like 2-3 million, whatever that loss would be. I don't think it would be anything significant. Like, what are you getting for Josie Altidore? You're not. Like, when you say loss, I'm interested. What are you basing that off of?
Well, I mean, we won't get a transfer fee. That's for sure. They'll leave on a free.
He's 31 years old. Yeah,
no, that's fine. But he's still Josie Altidore, right? Like, it's still saying goodbye to that imaginary influx of cash.
If anything, like, if they can get out of this contract, they're saving.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, in
that's
sweat
worth
equity,
more than his
in BS.
transfer fee.
I agree. I absolutely agree. But before, they were trying to have their cake and eat it too. They were trying to get rid of the hothead, but at the same time, fill their coffers. So,
or they believed in Josie Altidore and that fact he could bounce back.
Sure.
Right?
But I do think that it's been a long time since the front office truly and honestly believe that, and that's just supposition on my part, but like, we're talking years here, you know what I mean?
That's in 2019 he was pretty good.
Oh, I'm not talking 2019, I'm talking 2020. I think
pandemic
that's
year?
Yours is in the 2 years.
Yeah.
In a pandemic?
Again, it's supposition on my part, and it's arrogant supposition in my part, but I think, in the same, let me put it this way, in the same way that we've heard from a bunch of coaches across all sports that this was like an extended preseason camp and it brought the team together and all those wonderful buzzwords, I do think that when you're all in the same room together, you get a lot sicker of the worst parts of somebody's personality a lot quicker.
Mhm.
That's a lot of Josie Altidore slander, man. That's a
I'm
lot.
not slandering. I love the guy. But would you want to be roommates with him when he's pissed off? You know what I mean? Would you want to sit across at the cafeteria when he's in a bad mood? I don't know. For maybe for 2 days, but by day 5, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna eat outside if you're all
Your
right.
analogies are the best in the game, man. Best in the game.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks.
Is our boy Josh here?
Not yet. Oh no, yeah, there is.
Oh, perfect. Perfect time.
After timing.
We'll get his thoughts on this entire situation once he's there. Now joined by the Athletics, Joshua Kloke. How you doing, Josh?
What's up, guys? Sorry I'm late. I don't have anyone to blame but myself. I have no child here. I have no things to do.
Are you still in mourning like us about last night, or what?
No, not really. I think over the past few years, I've kind of become numb to these things. No, it's obviously. I mean, are we talking? We're obviously talking about the Leafs, right? Or are we talking?
Both, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a fan of other things. I'm a fan of a bunch of teams and bands or whatever, and I love being a fan. And I can't imagine a more excruciating fan experience than being a fan of the Leafs right now. I mean that. Like you wake up today. And it's just like I can't imagine. Like, is this what it was like to be a Chicago Cubs fan? Is this what it was like to be? I mean it. Like we are.
Yeah, Red Sox. Yep.
We're really entering that kind of realm of the belief that like this team can really do no good. And it's man, I can't imagine what it's like to be a real fan. I have, like we all do. I have a group chat with a bunch of high school buddies who are all very loyal Leafs fans, and there's just sadness there today.
It's just sad. It's
not
just
anger,
sad.
not anger,
Yeah,
sadness, and like that's I don't know. I guess I kind of find it strangely entertaining. It's all part of the experience.
I mean, I'm watching the Ken Burns baseball doc because it got remastered into 4K, and the Leafs remind me of the Brooklyn Dodgers, man. Like people loved that team, and they would go to World Series and just lose spectacularly.
Oh, World Series, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Well, kudos to you for having 3 years on your hands to get through Ken Burns baseball.
Oh, it's so good, man. It's so good.
It is good. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's move on to, I guess it's not really a happier topic. Josie Altidore and his Toronto FC future. What are your thoughts on what's been playing out, I guess, really since preseason and that U.S. men's national team camp where it came out that, Toronto FC might be looking to move Josie Altidore, and then obviously it's really come to the fore again recently.
I mean, if I'm being honest, I don't know if this is just something that started in preseason. I think this is something that has kind of been lingering over this team for years. Like I go back to when Josie Altidore's contract was signed in February 2019. You're coming off obviously a very, very disappointing TFC season. You've lost Sebastian Giovinco, which, yeah, I don't know. Like maybe that was the right thing to do because, I'm a big believer that, I mean, as you guys know, in playing young players and maximizing youth, and you have to get wary of players, being injured as they get older. Moving on from Victor Vasquez was the right move at the time. Like I'm a believer that if a club in any sport is not trending upwards, then it's best to just kind of cut ties and hit refresh sooner rather than later. And I remember in doing the reporting for Come On You Reds, I remember one of the things that stuck out was Tim Bezbatchenko saying one mistake that he believed past regimes with TFC made was kind of capitulating to fan interest and making decisions based on how they thought they would play out with fans. And Bezbachenko said that was something they never tried to do with TFC. Re-signing Josie Altidore felt like a move that was done to appease fans, both because of the loss of Sebastian Giovinco. You want to save face, and this was very much a Bill Manning-led signing. The trouble with that is you're 3 weeks off, a month off, hiring a new GM, and if you don't allow that new GM, Ali Curtis, to kind of have a say in, or you do allow him to have a say, but if you don't allow like everyone to kind of work together and work on the same path when it comes to huge club signings, you are sure to create troubles down the road. Mm-hmm. You couple all that with a player that is injury prone. You couple all that with a player that has a history of, thinking about himself, and he does a remarkable job at winning fan interest. And he's at his best. He's an incredible goal scorer. And I think if Josie Altidore is healthy and motivated, there are a few goal scorers like him in MLS. But this whole thing seemed like it was going to be an issue from the start. This is not, to me, that the warning signs did not appear in preseason. You know what I mean? So that's a long answer to a short question, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised by what's happening right now.
Right on. And Josh, speaking of injuries, you asked a very good question to Chris Armas in last press conference, and that was why the Venezuelan Soccer Federation were the ones to disclose the Jefferson Soteldo injury so close to a Toronto FC match. In general, like we think back to even the Pozuelo situation, have the club done themselves any favors in the way that they've handled injury disclosure, I guess, sort of this season, or is that just a non-issue for you?
Oh no, it's a definite issue for me. And it's an issue for me because we, just as media members, are at a serious disadvantage with the club being in Florida, and we have access to the team, once a week, and then after games, and I'm sure there are people saying, "Well, boo-hoo, like poor media, like you guys can figure out how to do your jobs," but we were able to tell better stories and provide better coverage and report on this team more accurately because we had access to training and because Greg Vanney was always forthright about injuries. And we could see when players weren't reporting for training, and there was more of an accountability there. And I think that accountability has kind of been lost. And I think that it's been difficult to report on this team. It is, because the best reporting is done is, when you have, it's not even about access. It's just having conversations with players and management. And there seems to be a move kind of away from that this year. And so the question, I was surprised. I think I was 5th or 6th in the queue, and I was surprised it didn't get asked. I mean, it's just, why did things happen in the way that they did with the announcement of that injury? Why? And Chris Armas's answer was, well, I didn't have that information until after the media availability on the Thursday. Okay. Like, does the club not?
Hold on. I got the quote here. Okay. And he says, "Let's face it, guys, this isn't intramural soccer. When you get information about a player, you don't rush to the media. You don't call for a press conference to let the opposition know one of your best players is out. So there's almost two sides of it. I know everyone wants the information, but 1, we didn't have it when I did media, and 2, it gets the next day. We were putting that out, Anyway, how it gets out there, and then everyone, like, you're asking, like, are we holding back the information? At least it sounds that way, but we didn't. So I think that almost should go without saying, but it's like people expect us to run and reveal should I call Caleb Porter and let him know, hey, just so you know, as you're preparing, so tell those out. Think about it, Josh. Think about it.
Yeah. And listen, this is a byproduct of the Zoom press conference era that I think we're all looking forward to moving past. Is that could have been a conversation between the media and Chris. And it's difficult. Chris Armas comes in, and I don't think any of us in the TFC press corps have met Chris Armas.
That's true.
You know, we've never been able to have conversations with him. And I'm trying not to compare everything to Greg Vanney, but his stature kind of looms large. But, you know, Greg was always forthcoming about information if you asked it in a smart manner. And all that did was just create kind of it took away the fear that, you know, the club might have about, like, how are we going to be reported on? It took away the fear of, you know, Greg invited questions. And what I'm just finding now is the club has not made it as easy as I'm sure we would have hoped to report, you know, in a real interesting and kind of accurate way on the club lately. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of fear and like, when Chris kind of says that, you just wish you would have had an opportunity to have more of a conversation, be like, I don't think there's an insinuation that you know, the media believes you're withholding information, but maybe if you could walk us through your thought process, we could report on that. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not that, you know, we want to put it all. Actually, it's funny. Like I remember growing up and kind of studying journalism, I was always fascinated by the way that soccer was reported on in England, because it just seemed like if there was one little juicy bit of information, it turned it into this huge kind of speculative thing. And I'm like, that sounds terrible. Like that. And it in a way, it feels like we're slowly moving towards that, because, and it's not even about an access thing. Again, it's not an access. Yeah. It's the inability to have conversations and constantly learn information. Like, we get access to this team once a week, and you have a stockpile list of questions, and you
get one, maybe two questions if you're lucky.
So I understand why Chris Armas is maybe defensive with me, because I asked the question in that way. It was a lot different, and again, boo-hoo, poor media, right? I get it.
Yeah.
You know, we were able to go to the training grounds, even on regen days, and ask questions and just gather and just report in a much more educated manner. And I don't think a lot of people feel like they have the opportunity to do that.
I mean, I really hate the poor media aside, because in a perfect system, I mean, the media is responsible for getting eyeballs on your product. So to be adversarial against them, you know what I mean? I have a I just don't like the poor media thing. And it's not that you said it. It's just, I hate it as a retort from the powers that be. Like,
Chris doesn't know us either, right? Like, we haven't met Chris, but Chris hasn't, like, and I get that. Like, I would be naturally kind of distrustful of someone like this. Sorry, but like, does Chris Armas know what any of us look like? Are we just voices?
Disembodied ringtones. Yeah.
It's a very weird process. So I don't know what the answer is yet, but I think that there's a lot of kind of I don't know. There's my sense is there's a lot of finger pointing going on within the club right now. Because of the poor results, because of the continued drama that's kind of happening off the field. And, you know, I do think that just if the team wants to kind of move forward in a positive way, and to kind of decrease that kind of finger pointing, I think I don't even want to say allowing the media, but giving the media an opportunity to report more in an in-depth manner, because that's what we're lacking right now. Again, it feels like that kind of English tabloid way where you get one little piece of information and then you take it much further than you should take it, because you don't have the conversations that allow you to become educated about the club that you want to report about in an educated manner.
Yeah. It's also a perfect storm of frustration, right? The team is frustrated, media are frustrated, fans are frustrated. You were there, so I'm going to ask you directly. People are saying that this is the new 2012, and I mean, if you look at the stats, right? 2012, we got 0 points from 30 at the outset. Right now we're at 5 points from a possible 21. I'm always like, well, we also had a really slow start in 2017. So I guess my question is are we in the new 2012, or is this, pandemic aside, just speaking about results on the field?
I never thought TFC were going to be a playoff team this year.
Okay.
I never thought they had. I thought there was a lot of things working against them, and it kind of reminded me of like the 2017 Blue Jays, where everything has to break right. A lot of things had to go right for this TFC team, and I looked at it and I said, you have a team, new manager, so there's going to be a learning curve there. A new manager that's asking a team to play a drastically different style, a style that requires a ton of running with a veteran team in the Florida heat. When you look at all those things adding up, again, I don't like, it feels like a bit of a perfect storm, but should we not have seen this coming in a way? So is it 2012? There's shades of Aaron Winter there, I guess, because, this is Aaron Winter was very, I don't want to say stubborn, but he believed in his approach. And I like the idea. I do. I like the idea of a team that runs and is aggressive and is entertaining and plays like kind of a high throttle, exciting brand of football. I like that. I don't think you have the personnel to do that right now. And it feels kind of like a Band-Aid situation. So again, I don't think anybody should be surprised. I think people were surprised in 2012, because there was a bit of talent on that roster, and you had players, you had Kubermans. I don't think anybody should be surprised. What do you guys think? Do you think they're a playoff team?
Nope.
I do think they're a playoff team. I think this team is the highest spending club on paper. And I think, they were up until 4 matches last season. They had 4 matches remaining, and they had a 60% chance at winning the Supporters' Shield, according to 538. So I absolutely think there's no reason why this team shouldn't be a top 7 team in the Eastern Conference. And dating back to 2012, just looking back at it, they finished with 23 points that season, 5 wins. This is not that team. There's 27 games left in the season. Every game they've been in MLS, except for that New York Red Bulls game, they were in it. And, they arguably played good enough to win against Orlando, arguably played good enough to win against Columbus in the second half at least. So I think, and this team also hasn't dressed all 3 of their designated players for 1 match this season.
I agree with you.
And Jonathan Osorio has only played 84 minutes this season.
I agree with you, and I do. The designated player one is a big one. Again, if Josie Altidore is one of your designated players, that's a question. I look at, and I agree, we haven't seen enough of Jonathan Osorio, who still remains one of the better players on this club. My concern is that and I know it's just a very kind of introductory stat, but when you look at some of the underlying numbers, like their expected goals, they're not underperforming. They're kind of right where they should be. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think, and again, like expected goals do not dictate, the way a club should be viewed. It's one part of it. But I look at that and I say, if this team was underperforming, right? If they weren't converting on their chances, then that's another thing, right? Then you say Soteldo's going to start putting them in. It's going to happen, but it's not like they're being, both goals and against. It's kind of right where, according to the models I've looked at, it's right where they should be, and that's really concerning.
Yeah, I don't disagree there, but does those numbers change when you have Alejandro Pozuelo as your number 10?
Yes, they should. But then the argument again, and I know we're turning this into back and forth, but that's good. I guess this is are you not too reliant on Alejandro Pozuelo then? Are you
That's
not?
a fair question.
That's a very fair question.
Well, when Pozuelo comes, and look, the team looked drastically different when he was on the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
They looked so much better. That's a lot of pressure to put on one player coming off an injury, not getting any younger, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Again, and anyone who has seen half of a tweet from me knows this is coming. Like, it's strange to me that after 4 or 5 games, the whole play your kids thing just went out the window. Right? I look at some of the options that they have. Like, why has Ralph Priso kind of been resigned to a bench role?
Because Oro,
playing a
don't you
fullback,
know Oro center mid?
Center.
So I honestly, I don't care that he's 16. Why is Shaquille Marshall-Reddy not playing?
Thank you.
Like, why is Jaden Nelson not being? If you're going to play like a 4-4-2 attacking, like, why is Jaden Nelson not getting a chance to just run? These players run. They're mobile. They don't have nagging injury concerns.
I've been told Jaden Nelson could be the fastest player on this Toronto FC team, and we haven't been able to see that yet. You have a number of veterans who are slowly getting used to life under a new coach after having Vanny Ball drilled in them. You have young players that are just eager to impress and will do what is asked because they want to play. They deserve to play. Again, I know anybody that reads my stuff is probably getting sick of me saying this, but this is a big part of why Chris Armas was brought in. But it does, like, one of Vanny's faults was that he sometimes trusted the wrong players, and he trusted these hardened MLS veterans that at best could do a job. I think that the upside with Shaquille, Jaden, Ralph, even Noble. I know Noble is not a runner and maybe doesn't work as well. He deserves a shot considering what Aro is doing at center midfield. Like, the fact that he has just seemingly abandoned that, to me is cause for concern.
Well, anyone who is, looking to be cheered up by this week's show last night is most definitely not in that state. But I did want to switch gears a little bit because the Canadian men's national team, of course, have a couple of big games coming up, and your thoughts on the squad they called in, and the coming months, which is a massive summer for the program between Gold Cup and, of course, the qualifiers as well.
I've been saying it. And I have to stick with it. This team should qualify for the World Cup. I'm a believer. I'm a believer in high-end talent, and if you have high-end talent, if you have game-breaking talent, that should be enough. I do, and this team has. It's not as if you have a new coach. John Herdman has been here for a while now. John Herdman knows how to connect with these players. John Herdman has the experience to have seen which players work best in certain situations. And again, I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but I don't think Alphonso Davies is going to play left back. I think he's going to be used in more of an attacking role. He's kind of this experience that you've been afforded as head coach, John Herdman. You have to be able to use that to your advantage, and I think he will. I think you're going to see players be used in different situations, and I don't think you're going to see kind of risky 4-2-2-2 setups that you did against the United States. I think you're going to see more of a kind of cohesive formation and more of a cohesive plan, more of a kind of a standard starting 11. What gives me confidence is I don't know how much pressure there is on this team, right? Pressure on some of the other CONCACAF nations to qualify. There's if you allow your best players, because you could argue they have just as much raw talent as any other team outside of Mexico in CONCACAF. Let these players play. Figure out their best positions and let them play with the kind of freedom and this team doesn't have the burden of expectation, right? There's no, comparing them to TFC, for example, there's no lingering kind of failures, right? Just let them play, figure out their best position, which he's had a few years to do, and let the talent speak for itself. And that's why I do think this team should get as close as possible and should probably qualify for 2022. And it's exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting.
The Suriname game is almost a perfect coaching challenge for John Herdman, because you have this team that's done a whole bunch of recruiting and brought in a bunch of like Eredivisie players. So on paper, like all of a sudden the difference between the two sides becomes marginal. Well, maybe not marginal, but it becomes a lot closer. So then it comes down to how do you set up your team, the culture he's been building through all these years. So that's going to be a fascinating game for me. I think, it's obviously one that, like you said, Canada should win fairly comprehensively, but it could be a tricky game. And again, it comes down to what Herdman's built here in terms of how they fare in that match.
Yeah. And again, like to me, it just comes down to whether he can make adjustments on the fly. But I look at that. I look at his bench. I look at his depth. You could say there are some holes in the back, but I don't think we're ever going to, I don't think we're ever going to have a men's national team that, we're not asking questions about the back. But this team should be able to outscore opponents. I guess I just feel as well like we've talked a lot about this core and Davies and David, and they have attacking options. They have exciting options. And I don't even think this is a matter of like, now it's the time to do it. Now is the time to just play and just play with the freedom.
House money.
Yeah. And the confidence that you've been afforded with the success that you've had in your European leagues. You have to allow Alphonso Davies to have more of a voice in the room. You have to allow Jonathan David to have more of a voice in this room. Now is the time to just let these players grow and just be like, embrace your identity as just an exciting, fun, young team. Don't overcoach them. Just play, right? And I think you could probably win a lot more fans that way too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll let you go there, Josh. But thank you so much for joining the show this week.
Oh, anytime, guys.
Yeah, thanks,
awesome
Josh.
To see you, Josh.
Yeah, take it easy, guys.
Wow, so a lot to unpack there from Josh Kloke. A lot of great stuff and points. I thought it was one of the things that was definitely interesting for me was the whole media thing, and I definitely agree with him, and I think it goes back to the conversation we were having today. Even when I was listening to Jeff talk about the Josie Altidore situation, just to single out one example, I'm like, he's making a lot of, he's reading a lot between the lines, he's making a lot of things, but like the club, like what else is he going to do? Because we almost no information on this. He's trying to piecemeal together a bunch of different little tidbits of information that we're being given. Obviously, there's some stuff that is always going to be kept internal, but it just seems like this year, and again, it could be the Zoom disconnect, it could be a bunch of different things, but it does kind of feel like we're working with breadcrumbs this year to try and put together this story about Toronto FC.
Well, 2 points I want to make on that is that this is coming down from the front office. This is Bill Manning, Ali Curtis. They've been on record quite a bit saying that they want to keep things close to their chest there. They want to keep things in-house, which is fine if you want to approach it that way. But you also have to understand is that's going to come with a lot of speculation, as we do a lot on this show. Secondly, is Josie Altidore, and he hasn't spoken to media once this year. I've said this on our Twitter Spaces. We've spoken to Michael Bradley more times than I could probably count, but we have never spoken to Josie Altidore this year. The club is not. I don't know if Josie doesn't want to speak to media. I don't know if the club doesn't want him to speak to media, but there are question marks there. The last time Josie Altidore actually spoke to media was, I think, September of last year, and he did media availability once, maybe twice last season, all of last season. So this is where all the speculation comes from, because we're not hearing from the club itself, at least directly from the club, and we're not hearing directly from Josie Altidore. So there's no real way we'd know the exact story, all the details, without hearing from either party. So, I mean, if that's the way they want to go about it, fine. But as long as you understand that there is going to be lots of speculation that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to. Nobody gets to own their narrative. The second that you're a going concern in the public sphere, that's when you've sacrificed a certain measure of owning your own narrative. And trying to have your cake and eat it too is a fool's errand. I think there is some truth into what they've been dangling in front of us, which is tactics and gamesmanship. And, you don't want to, go into a poker match and say, well, my hand sucks, but I'm going to bluff you all the same. But I do think it's become a crutch. We do not deserve to own, to know everything, but this has now gone into an opposite extreme. And like the comment just now, reporters got to report. And if you give us nothing, that the people that we're beholden to, the people on the WTR forums and the wider TFC land, they're going to speculate in ways that are so far beyond the measured approach that we're trying to bring here. It forces us to go there, unfortunately, because it is like one big flat circle. So anyway.
Yeah. I guess, I've been in every TFC media scrum this year. A lot of it is due to, the situation that we're living in. It's a pandemic. They're in Florida. So they're kind of doing what they can from that standpoint. It's tough because, again, we're living in a global pandemic. So how much can you really fault them for that? But it's an issue with transparency in general. Alejandro Pozuelo, his injury, for example, Chris Armas on April 22nd. Alejandro Pozuelo suffered his injury on April 1st. So on April 22nd, Chris Armas told us that Alejandro Pozuelo was very close to coming back. Alejandro Pozuelo told us yesterday, or when we spoke to him after the game, that the doctor told him that he would be out for about 10 weeks. Is April 22nd close to 10 weeks after his injury? Is that very close?
I think it's really important.
It's an issue of fear, right?
Yeah.
This team, you're fearing the opposition, knowing that your players are going to be out. Like Orlando City told us that Nani and Alexander Pato are going to be out. Mm-hmm. It's just this team should have that swagger to know that, yes, we can tell you that our guys are going to be out, but our team is still good enough to go out there and beat you. It's it's like you're playing a chess match out of fear.
Mm-hmm. I got it in the early season. Again, like the secrecy totally made sense to me during the Club Lyon series. Yeah. I think that was actually something that helped Toronto FC in a big way and helped them get through. But like you said, at this point, it's a mentality thing. Like you should be good enough that you can beat, like the difference between, and I know you want to have every advantage that you can, but the difference between beating a side should not be whether or not they're scouting you, thinking you have Pozuelo and not. Like that little video thing should not be the difference between consistently beating teams. Like that.
That's fair.
Sure. Yeah. I guys, I think it's important. I do this too. We've always got to take a step back and make sure that we're not judging TFC with before times logic, right? We have to allow that they are fumbling in the dark in a boardroom in a hotel in Orlando, trying to figure out the Wi-Fi to get the Zoom thing set up in the first place. Do you know what I mean? Like I know that it sucks and it's so easy.
We've never had any problems with that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so easy to apply before times logic, and they're going to fail every time. If you apply before times logic to this club and their goings on, they're going to fail miserably 100% of the time. So we have to allow for that margin. I mean, fair is fair, criticism is fair, and let's keep on the criticism train. But I always, sometimes the temptation to like jump that scale right into a totally unreasonable expectation is just it's so strong. I do it myself. So it's important for me to consistently remind that, because the team is not covering themselves in glory right now, and we're going to be critical, but it's really important to me to consistently stress that we take that step back, right? And that's really all I wanted to say.
I also wanted to kind of in that vein, like bring up a point I wanted to make on, I know you guys were talking about whether or not this was the 2015 season, or sorry, 2012 season.
2012 season.
To me, it seems a lot more 2015, where Toronto FC is just over-reliant on one player, Alejandro Pozuelo, to, like they were on Sebastian Giovinco that season, to really get them to the playoffs. I think they go as far as Alejandro Pozuelo takes them at this current moment with the current squad and what we've seen of them. I do think there's the ability to be much better than this, but with the team they have right now and what they've shown through this 7 + 4, 11 game sample size in all competitions, this to me looks like a team that, again, is heavily reliant on what Pozuelo can do. And if he can have another close to MVP season, then they're a playoff team. If not, then they're really on the bubble.
Perhaps.
Well, 2015, are they a playoff team that gets trounced by Montreal 3-0 off the back of a Didier Drogba super game? Like,
correct. Yeah.
I'll go as far as saying, maybe it's a hot take or not, I think when all these pieces are healthy, I think when they have, I mean, maybe not Josie Altidore, but when they have Jefferson Soteldo, Alejandro Pozuelo, Jonathan Osorio all in the lineup, I think they could be the best team in Major League Soccer. I really do believe that, and that's because I believe how good Pozuelo is. That's because I believe how good Soteldo is. And that's because this exact same team has proven it in the past. If you think about the additions that this team made to their roster, it's Kamar Lawrence, who, I mean, we know what he can do. He's a very good player. He makes that TFC backline a lot more stable. And then also Dom Dwyer as a luxury off the bench. This roster is this roster is arguably even better than it was last season. And like we said, they were 4 games away from winning a Supporters' Shield.
Mike, I'll take it one step further. Why can't we be the Sounders? I mean, we get compared to them all the time. Why can't we be the Sounders? Like, we can suck all the way to the summer transfer window and then just have a run right to MLS Cup glory.
I think it's in the cards.
I think and all signs point to yes. If we come back to BMO in June, I mean, that's a shot in the arm for everyone. That's going to paper over a hell of a lot of cracks. So, in the same way that potentially being in Orlando has turfed the beginning of the year, you can hold out hope that the reverse will hold true for the second half of the year.
And that makes a huge difference, right? It's something we often overlook, is the fact that this team is not playing at home.
Huge difference.
Yeah, massive, yeah.
Massive difference. I mean, look at how they wilted in Orlando, in their home ground, becoming hostile, right? I mentioned it on our Spaces show. If they've had a bad day at the office in Florida, where everybody can go to Senior Frogs and get wasted at like 4 PM,
almost again,
and then called their wives and kids at home and expect to be propped up, but instead get like dragged into the muck of whatever Doug Ford said or this and that nonsense. Like, it's coming from all sides. These are not as much as we'd like to believe that they are the brass statues that we'll make of them later. They're human beings with feelings and thoughts and moods and all that other nonsense that makes us fallible. So
legitimate reasons, but like, there are still fixable issues with this team. Like, that doesn't being away from home.
Excuse them. Yeah,
being away from home doesn't excuse Chris Armas's decision making. They're putting Aro Jr. at central midfield for the 3rd straight game when you have other natural center midfields on the roster.
Absolutely.
I mean, he can say whatever. Like Pep Guardiola, he has midfielder. Like, you're not. No offense to you, Chris Armas, but you're not Pep Guardiola, so that reference doesn't really add up. 2, TFC is not Manchester City, and they don't have the players that Manchester City have. Aro Jr. is not the equivalent of Kevin De Bruyne playing a false nine. It's
Yeah.
not the same.
Nope.
And it hasn't been working out. It hasn't been working out. There are better options there at central midfield. So also
remember,
the Alex Bono and Quentin Westberg dilemma. Why is Quentin Westberg not given a start in the first 11 matches of the season? Is this team being set up for the success? And that does nothing to do with home field advantage.
Okay. When Ryan came to work for us, one of his first articles for WTR was comparing the Armas hire with Klopp at Liverpool. And if you go back on Twitter and look at the tweets when Klopp had his first season at Liverpool, they wanted to fillet him. I mean, they were like, I can't believe my team made this decision. What the hell is wrong with Liverpool? You know, there is a certain modicum of patience that we need to have for an aggressive system such as this. Now, do we put our faith in Armas for a season and a half and 6 more transfer windows, and then we eventually sack him and our team is the Red Bulls? Or, you know, these are the things that we have to deal with. The fact of the matter is, I'd like to think the front office considered all of this. They knew that they weren't playing from home. They knew that they were playing in the Orlando Heat. They knew that they were off the back of a whole year of doing this. You know, Vanny didn't leave at the opportune time, but when is there ever an opportune time? You know, I would take a full season of Armas square peg round holing into oblivion over the knee-jerk regime changes that we used to experience here and that are par for the course in like the Brazil Premier League and stuff like that, where coaches last 4 or 5 games before there's a turnover. I think, you know, but you have to be smart about it, and we can argue about whether they're going to be smart about it or whether they can see the forest for the trees. I think it's way too early for the Armas out calls. Way too early for the Armas out calls. We bet on this horse for better or worse. We need to see it through to some sort of completion.
Well, let's finish up the show very quickly, just talking about Canada.
no one wants to go off that. No, I just ended the show. Ended the show.
I mean, if you want me to just comment quickly on it, is that James Grossi was on our show, and he told us, even when talking about Greg Vanny, he said sometimes it takes 2 years, up to 2 years, for a coach to really see what a coach's vision, because they're really inheriting a roster from before that wasn't really made for them. So I do believe that this team will get a lot better. I do believe the pieces that Chris Armas has brought in so far and Ali Curtis have brought in have been really good additions to this squad. I think every piece so far that they've brought in has shown that they can not only compete, but even be a starter on this team when it's given the right opportunity. So I think, yes, we do give Chris Armas
absolutely
a longer leash, but that doesn't mean we can't ask hard questions along the way.
Absolutely.
And if these hard questions continue to pile up, then the questions will get harder and harder. And if you're making decisions that simply, you know, don't make sense, like the fact that Richie Larea playing higher up the field is like a revelation.
Yeah,
it's like an epiphany. Oh my God, Richie Larea can play higher up the field. That's something interesting. Like, what do you mean? Have you not seen TFC the past year?
Exactly. We're making a lot of assumptions. Like, that could have just, I mean, you were there, so I trust your assumptions. But at the same time, I like, maybe it was word salad. You know, a lot of us went.
Okay, but regardless, when Richie Larea moved higher up the field, did it not all of a sudden work?
Yeah.
Like, surprise! Like, Aro's better at right back, Richie Lara's better at right wing, Mark Delgado's better at center mid. Is that a surprise to anybody?
It isn't. But, you know, on WTR, people are like, well, you know, he said once we have 2 number 1 goalies, so we better hang him by his toenails because he's not playing Q. Like, I do not want to be held to that standard. You know, if I said 8 years ago that you know, I was thinking about buying a puppy, and then people are like, well, you never bought that puppy, so you're a liar. Like, that's an impossibly high standard to hold someone to. There's a very good chance that when he said it, he meant it, and then he saw something that changed that. Like, he doesn't owe us a Dear Diary entry for every decision that
I think he owes the fans that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you consider the fact that Quentin Westberg was this number 1 goalkeeper the past 2 seasons. I think if he wants to do any favors with himself with the fan base, then you do owe the fan base an explanation for why you're making a different decision than what the fan base was used to the past 2 seasons. I think you'll do yourself a favor if you give an honest answer with that.
He's not Greg Vanney, so already that explains why he's making different decisions than Greg Vanney, right? Like, I don't think he needs to come out and say, well, I'm not paying, you know what I mean? Like, but what if the answer is I hate him and he smells? Like, I don't want to know that.
What?
You know what
if
I
that's
mean?
the answer, then you shouldn't be the coach.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. But what if the answer is as petty as that? Like, I think it's more damage for, you know, or
if the answer is as petty as that, then there's bigger questions we need to ask.
Sure. But what coach in the universe is going to put himself in that kind of a position of vulnerability? Like, well, you know, let me tell you, the real reason why I don't like Q is he parked in my spot, you know, at the BMO training ground and he wouldn't move his car. Like, it could, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to know that. But I don't want to know that. Like, I don't know. I think
so the coach is protecting himself because he knows it's a dumb decision. Is that what you're saying essentially?
No, but I'm saying that the margins for us, the fans, who are usually like, I mean, there are fans that are like, I don't care what it costs in a pandemic year. You should buy out Josie right now and get a new DP immediately, and that DP should be Lionel Messi, and I will accept no substitute. Right? Like, you know, Chris has to answer to that. That's even dumber than the Richie Larea comment about, you know, him being a revelation on the wings, right? That comes from a place where there's a tacit refusal to understand how MLS works, right? Like, any, you know, just shoot him into the sun. Like, forget about the fact that it's a pandemic year, and if MLSE spends millions of dollars, like, just lights it on fire, it's a PR disaster for everyone involved, and the expectation that they're even going to consider that is so from space, it belies all reason, right? So I don't think when you say answer to the fans, that's the lion's share of the fans, that they, you know, they want their pound of flesh.
That's the lion's share of the fans on Twitter.
Well, that's the fans.
That's not, you know, no, get out of here. That's not even close to the entire fan base, right?
Okay, I agree with you. But,
I think anybody who's watched this team the past 2 years is wondering why isn't Quentin Westberg given
100%.
at least a shot, right?
100%.
And if your answer is Alex Bono has been playing well, then, like, I mean, we're not dumb. Like,
yeah, no,
Alex
you're
Bono's been
right.
playing outstanding. Like, is he playing that well? Is it the fact that, you know, maybe Alex Bono is younger? Does he want to give him more of a run of play to get himself acclimated? Is it the fact that
they want to sell him, and he's costing them a lot? So put him.
Well, no, you can't say that. But
exactly, you can't
say that. Perhaps you say, you know, Alex Bono is a bit younger, and we want to get him the experience because he's a proven winner in the past. Something along those lines. And then maybe say, you know, he said the right thing with Quentin Westberg. We're 2 number 1 goalkeepers, but I'm sure, you know, Quentin Westberg probably has questions and whatnot. Like, it's a very fine line you gotta tread. But as you said, like, you wouldn't want to be held to that standard. The reality is that it's out there. It's printed.
Yep.
There's video evidence of you saying that. Of you saying, for example, Pozuelo is very close on April 22nd, and the doctor's coming out and telling Pozuelo that he's going to be out 10 weeks. If we have that information, it's going to come back to bite you in the butt.
And
so
it has. But the fact that it's persistently, do you know what I mean? Like, there becomes a certain point where you cross the line into the land of the ridiculous, and I think that this constant, well, he said once, you know, in passing, that he has 2 number 1 goalkeepers.
For sure, that always happens.
As a slam dunk. It's not the slam dunk that you think it is, right? Like, it's so, you know, we need to be less reactionary, absolutely, but the club needs to do a way better job in trying to avoid that eventuality, right?
Exactly. There's that balance.
There is a balance, 100%, absolutely.
I'm sure we have some great Jeff clips that we can pull back from the old days of him saying some hilarious stuff.
Exactly. I mean, I go after charities. I go after charities, guys.
Yeah,
like,
that's fair.
I wish I had a reset button. Like, I deserve at least 5 mulligans. I go after charities.
Remember
a jerk.
when we signed Kamar Miller? Paul Miller, rather?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But let's finish up very, very quickly. We've gone way over time this week, but there's been a lot to talk about. Very quickly, by just talking about Canada, because I do think there are some very interesting notes as it relates to both Canada and Toronto FC. Of course, the main roster was released. Jonathan Osorio, Richie Larea on it, as well as Loney, Liam Fraser. But I think for Toronto FC purposes, the more interesting part, at least recently, is the 10 players they called in to play some pre-camp friendlies against Canada, essentially help the main guys train. And that's a lot of young guys.
And
Shaquille Masharuti, Jade Nelson. I'm getting there, Jeff. Jeez. Way to just spoil the punchline. Nova Lakello, Ralph Prizo. But there's two interesting ones, and that's Luke Singh and Ayo Akinola. Of course, we know Ayo was going to be part of that January camp, pulled out through injury. I think in a lot of ways, this is kind of a do-over for that. It gives him a chance to come into this camp, play against some guys, get acclimated, see whether or not he really feels the Canada setup. Luke Singh, what's going on there? You got called up for Trinidad, so this is an interesting one. I mean, I guess it's probably the same thing. Like Canada's giving him an opportunity, but like he could go into Canada camp and then get cap-tied like a week later. So it's a bit of a bizarre one.
That's fine. Daniel Henry is about to break D-Rose record with own goals. So any center back pairing for Canada that doesn't involve the names Cornelius and Henry, I am happy with. Even Ryan, who's Trini on our staff, is like, no, he should go play for Canada. So, I applaud it. We need depth at center back, but I wonder what Mike thinks.
It's very interesting. It'll be an audition for. It's kind of weird because it'll be an audition not for Luke Singh or Ayo Akinola. It'll be an audition for John Herdman and the Canadian men's national team from Ayo Akinola and Luke Singh. Like they want to check out what this camp's all about. I wouldn't be surprised if Luke Singh ended up turning down that Trinidad and Tobago call-up because he sees a potential avenue for him here to make it with the Canadian men's national team, who in my opinion, they just have a higher pedigree in terms of star power, in terms of overall talent on the roster, in terms of depth and whatnot. They have a better chance of making it to the World Cup than a team like Trinidad and Tobago, who have done it in the past and are still a capable country. And Luke Singh's also someone who has ventured different places around the world, so he has that overall experience, and perhaps maybe that would incline him more to leave Canada and go somewhere else. So I really don't know where his head's at right now, to be honest with you. That's something I'm interested to seeing, and I'm interested to see how this all unfolds. Great victory for Canada for getting both of them into their camp, even though it is just an extended training camp. If they can get either player, even potentially both players on board, that's just another boost for this system, because we know how much potential both players have. So I'm excited to see kind of how this whole thing unfolds, and it may help the fact that there's a lot of TFC youngsters there as well. Yep. It's a culture that they're kind of building there, in not only TFC but also Canada Soccer. So if these guys can come through together, if they can all play for TFC together, there is that sort of camaraderie there that could be appealing to Luke Singh and Ayo Akinola.
Yeah, I think Ayo's I think Ayo's higher up the depth chart in the U.S. than he is in Canada.
That's I don't know about that.
Will Sargent and Giassi Zardes versus
Josh Sargent.
What about Daryl DK?
Plays guitar for Echo and the Bunnymen. Sorry.
What about Daryl DK?
He can do it in Barnsley, but can he do it at the Azteca on a hot Wednesday afternoon?
Could Ayo Akinola?
I think the argument would be the U.S. has more Ayo Akinolas. Canada might have higher quality in terms of Jonathan David. I don't think the U.S. has a Jonathan David. I'm not even sure they have a Kyle Larin. So I think that would be the argument. But the U.S., I think he's lower on the U.S. depth chart just in the fact that they have significantly more depth.
I was listening Extra Time, and a couple of weeks ago it was Charlie Davies on there. I mean, Charlie Davies is a pretty regular guest, and obviously former U.S. men's national team striker. And he was actually going down his depth chart for strikers, and he got to number 6, I believe it was, and it was Josie Altidore.
I thought he had Josie at number 1 at a certain point.
Well, okay. not like recently, like a couple weeks ago, but he actually didn't even mention Iowakanola. So I do actually think there's not that much opportunity. And there's also the possibility that Canada goes out and Canada plays with 2 strikers. That's not a possibility right now with the States, with the pieces that they have around, their sort of formation there for Greg Berhalter's formation. So I think opportunity-wise, I think it would be better for him to sign with Canada right now. And also, coming through the ranks, is there anyone that's really a highly touted striker behind Iowakanola, a youngster that's coming through the ranks, that's a striker that's, everyone's kind of looking forward to?
Ralph Prizo's brother.
Ralph Prizo, here you go. But
who loves being referred to as Ralph Prizo's brother. That'll be on his soccer card.
I'm
Ralph
going to make a
Prizo's
proclamation. At some point, Ralph Prizo is going to become Hugo Mbonge's brother. He's that good. But anyway,
nice.
TFC2 talk. We love it.
We love it.
Actually, shout out Garrett McLaughlin, because he scored his 3rd goal
is he eligible for Canada?
as many matches, and he also has 1 assist. 8th overall MLS Super Draft pick who plays for TFC2. So shout out the Young Reds, and I think they're back in action tomorrow night.
All right, well, let's wrap things up there. Canada in action on Saturday and then following Tuesday. So we'll have a little bit more coverage on next week's show before the decently big game against Suriname. But great to have Josh Kloke on again. A lot of good stuff from him about the club and everything going forward. Thanks again to Kevin, Sophia, and Edwin for the behind-the-scenes work that they do on the show each and every week. On behalf of Michael Singh, Jeffrey P. Nesker, I've been Mitchell Tierney. Enjoy the international break, everyone.